Welcome, wonderful Dolphin fans, to the pre-free agency edition of Dolphins In Depth, the podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. We are just days away from free agency. It is right around the corner. The Miami Dolphins, they have created about $30 million in terms of cap savings by shaking down Terron Armstead. I think that's temporary. And also shaking down Bradley Chubb. The details of that deal are out now. Joining me to talk numbers is the illustrious Barry Jackson, joining us from the world beyond. Barry, the details are out on the Bradley Chubb deal. Ultimately, I forget what Terron saves them about $14 million in cap space. I think Bradley Chubb saves them about $16 million in cap space right now.
Correct. So that adds up to 30. They've already committed a couple million with Keon Smith and Cam Good. So that brings
those don't count. They're going to bottom out in the bottom 51.
Yeah, they're in decent shape. But Omar, I want more cap space. I want even more. I want Tua restructured to give you another $19 million.
Oh, wait a minute. You used to not be on the Tua restructuring.
I know I am. I'm greedy. I want to go into Monday with $55 million in space because I've got 101 needs I've got to fill, and I want to be in position to add the best possible players. I know last year they tried bargain shopping. They had some success, obviously. Brewer, Brooks, give them a lot of credit for that. Fuller was competent, but I want them to be able to spend big money on a couple of need positions.
But Barry, here's the thing. You're going to Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, and everything's overpriced. You're not going to get anything good. I mean, think about this. You're in a market where Javon Holland is a top 10 free agent target out there. Barry, you wouldn't even sign Javon Holland for $12 million. Let's be real about this. Would you give Javon $12 million?
I do have a little news for you. The Dolphins were talking to Holland about money in that range. I was told by someone who's involved in the safety market. Now, obviously, he's going to get more than that. He's going to go into free agency. But the Dolphins did make an effort to sign Holland. And they did make an effort last year to sign Wilkins and Rob Hunt as well. So it's not like they're allowing these players to walk out the door. But
hold on. If an effort is $5-6 million a year below market price, did you really make an effort?
No, but I don't blame the Dolphins for Holland because this was a case of a player who's a good player, but he's coming off not a great year, who's going to get more than the Dolphins can afford. And
two not a great years.
I hold the Dolphins responsible only for Wilkins because I think there was a way to get a done deal earlier. I don't blame them for Rob Hunt because there was no justification for giving a guard $100 million, even though Hunt's a terrific player. But I think you do have to be willing to spend big money on at least one guard, whether it's James Daniels, whether it's Will Freeze of the Colts, two players who are really good who are coming off injuries, whether it's Kevin Zeitler, who's older, but as you know, he's still effective, Tevin Jenkins of Chicago, Aaron Banks from San Francisco, a good scheme fit. Maybe Mekhi Becton, who obviously was a one-year guard success story in Philly after failing as a tackle for the Jets. Patrick McCarry of Baltimore, Austin Corbett of Carolina. Omar, I want to emerge Monday with one of those guys, even if it costs me $12 to $15 million a year. And I know it pains the Dolphins to spend that kind of money at a guard, but I don't want to leave this to chance. At least one of their guard spots has to be filled by an established pedigreed veteran, even if it costs you $10 to $15 million a year. I think it'd be ludicrous to go into next year gambling on two low-priced guards, just hoping they're going to be good. Guys who have a checkered history, some success, minimum caliber guys or guys in the $3 to $4 million range are waiting for the draft. That's too risky to do. You need two people movers at guard, and you need to make sure one of them is an established pedigreed veteran who has a record of great success, even if it costs you big time. Just my view.
I hear your view, and I don't agree with it. I'm not overpaying for the position that I think is the least valuable in the NFL for a starting position. I'm not going double digits. I'm just not. I'm putting out there Aaron Brewer-esque deals. Might go a little bit higher. Instead of $21 million, might go $24 million. I'm okay with maybe going a little bit more aged and mature and just doubling or tripling down on that position. And Barry, draft-wise, if I address other positions, if I have other needs taken care of, to give you a perfect example, if I give you the choice of going out there and spending $14 million a year on an offensive guard, you could choose. I don't care. Aaron Brooks
will freeze.
Yeah,
Aaron Banks
you
didn't
could
cost
choose.
quite as much.
Or spending it on Jonathan Allen, who is being released by the Washington Commanders. If I am giving you a budget of $14 million and you're Steve Ross, how are you going to allot that money? I know you've had issues with offensive guard more so than you've had issues with defensive tackle. But one is a impactful, superior player. The other is a guard. How are you going to spend that money, Barry?
My answer to you would be, I'm going to create enough cap space to have money for both. I'm going to restructure to it. Give you 19 more million. You're up to 49. You restructure Sealer with a raise as an upfront payment, which will lower his cap number. Same with Jordan
what you putting
Brooks.
that raise on? Because Sealer is one of the biggest bargains in the NFL now.
Right. But you have money for everything. If you do a couple of more restructures, including Tua, you get close to 60 million in space. Then you can have your Will Freeze or James Daniels. You can have a defensive tackle, whether it's Jonathan Allen or someone else. I personally have concerns about Allen. To me, he's a declining player who had an injury last year. I know he has
declining players in free agency.
One thing that I would say in your defense with regard to Jonathan Allen is this. He'll probably be among the top 3 defensive tackles available. It's not a deep defensive tackle market. They're obviously not getting the guy from Philadelphia. He would cost too much, the one that Vic Fangio wanted them to sign a year ago. Exactly, right. And the rest of the class isn't great. So they'll find a functional starter probably at defensive tackle. He's probably not going to be as good as Calais Campbell was last year. Obviously, there's still hope Calais will come back. But you made a great point on Twitter. Why does Calais have to rush into anything? He can sit back, see what contender wants him, is willing to pay him $5 or $6 million a year. So I guess with Calais, it's tricky because you don't know if he's going to come back. You don't know what number he'll accept if he does come back to Miami. So to me, defensive tackle has to be addressed day one. You're not going to get a great player there. I think you have a better chance of getting an impact player at guard than tackle. But my answer to you is I spend on both. And I spend on one high-quality safety, whether it's Jeremy Chin or someone else, and I spend what's necessary to find a starting corner. I don't go bargain basement hunting shopping thinking you're going to fill most of your needs that way, because that's no way to operate if you're trying to save your job. And I know Dolphins fans are going to come at me and say, well, we shouldn't be sacrificing the future to save the job of Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. But my answer to you is this. You have a small window left of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey, and you need to seize on this window over the next year or two, because if you don't win a playoff game in the next year or two, then you're probably talking about another pseudo rebuild. So why not do everything you can to augment the roster immediately? And I'm not saying trade draft picks. I rule that out. But spend the money you have to spend to get the highest quality players you can at guard, defensive tackle, safety, corner, and see where it takes you. Now, am I being irresponsible financially, Omar, by saying that?
Yes, you are, Barry. And here's the thing that we got to understand. How many years has Steve Ross gone out and let them make it rain and let them irresponsibly build this team? I am not going to hamstring them and make them play with one hand tied behind their back. I'll let them go to the bank of Tua. I'll maybe even let them restructure a Sealer. But understand, restructure means his pay is going to have to double, because I believe he's making $8 million a year, which in my mind is just ridiculous. I understood why he took it. I understood why Drew Rosenhaus advised him to take it. He suffered a knee injury like the day he took the deal. Bird in the hand's better than 2 in the bush. But I'm not letting these guys sign ridiculous contracts that are potentially going to hinder the next coach, the next GM. I'm not going to let them create a mess. And I'm not saying that I don't think that Chris Grier will act irresponsibly, because as I've mentioned to you before and on this podcast, I can't find you evidence of in 20 years this guy acting irresponsibly. Have they been bad at drafting? Absolutely. Sometimes have they bad at free agency? Yeah. Do they win on trades? Best thing that Chris Grier does. But I'm not going to sit here and say he's a good GM, but I'm not going to say he does things desperately, because he does not do it. And I don't expect him to create all this cap space to go out there and just pay everybody, give everybody money. Because when you look at the talent in free agency, Barry, it's not good. I'm still waiting for guys like today where Jonathan Allen gets cut, because the cut players are going to jump immediately to the top of the talent list because this free agent class is so poor. When Javon Holland is a top 10 free agent in this class and 85% of Dolphins don't want him back, that just says to you, look at everybody else's free agents. What's out there are people that people don't want.
Yeah, it's a good point you raise. I think defensive tackle, there's not the quality player there where you have to spend a ton of money. Corners, there are about 30 starting caliber corners available. 30? Yeah, there are about 30 corners who started in the league last year. Best of the group, obviously, DJ Reed, Rasul Douglas, Javarius Ward, San Francisco, Carlton Davis of Detroit, Byron Murphy with Minnesota, although the Vikings are trying to keep him, Mike Hilton, Asante Samuel. So you should be able to get a corner without having to pay a ton. I'm not sure you'll get a corner at the rate you got Fuller at last year.
Yeah, that's good at the rate they want to pay, about $7 million.
Exactly. So you're probably going to have to pay, I don't know, $8 to $10 million for a good starting corner opposite Ramsey, which allows you to keep Kohu in the slot. So I'm not worried about having to break the bank at corner. Now with safety, here's the question. There are a few guys who stand out among the pack who are going to be costly. Put Holland aside because we don't think he's coming back. Justin Reed, Julian Blackmon, very good player for the Colts. Jeremy Chin from Washington, who has sort of those Kyle Hamilton vibes from Washington, can fill the box score with forced fumbles and interceptions and passes defended. A good player. Trevon Moehrig from the Raiders, who's very durable. Also a guy who can do a lot of things, fits Anthony Weaver's defense well. So the question is, it's safety, Omar.
Hufanga? You forgot about Hufanga from the
one of those
49ers?
guys, or wait and try to get something cheaper Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, Barry, the safety market is usually the first to sort of dry up in free agency. And I know you don't want to go second tier shopping, Barry. I know it. That's not how you roll. You know, you're a fashionable man. You don't want to go on the clearance rack. I'm shopping on the clearance rack, Barry, for safety. I'm shopping on the clearance rack for a lot of positions, including offensive line. I think that they did quite well overpaying second-tier free agents last year. Nobody was talking about Jordan Brooks. Nobody was talking about Aaron Brewer. Nobody was talking about Kendall Fuller. Jonnu Smith might have been one of the top free agent signees last year.
Yes.
And he was you cannot, Barry, show me a talent out there right now that's like Jonnu Smith, where he's still on the south side of 30, doesn't have durability issues, isn't coming off an injury, has produced in the league, but still has upside. Of the 400 free agents that are out there, Barry, you can't name me Jonnu Smith. And that's why I'm not going out there and being ultra aggressive in this free agent class, because I think that their teams, are the Dolphins probably in the most desperate position? I think maybe only the Giants are more desperate than them. But I'm not acting desperate. If you go to the bar and you act desperately, Barry, you're going to walk out of there with the Uggo. And you're just gonna pick up and take whatever is there. And unfortunately, I don't think this team can afford to just pick up and take whatever is there.
I think your approach is the one the Dolphins are going to take. I would be super aggressive early, spending a lot of money at guard and one defensive back position, either a frontline safety like a Jeremy Chin or a frontline corner, Rasul Douglas, someone of that ilk. I would do that, and then I would be more cost conscious. Although I would be willing to spend big money at defensive tackle, I just don't think there's anyone out there who's worth spending big money on. But I do think the Dolphins ultimately will take your approach, Omar, because that's what they've done historically over the last couple of years. Obviously, there was the 1 year where they spent a ton on Terron Armstead and they opened the pocketbooks and they just spent wildly. But that was not the approach last year, and it worked out well for them. They did a very good job in free agency last year. The problem last year, obviously, was the deep passing game disappeared entirely. They couldn't run the ball because they mishandled guard in the interior line. And also, they obviously didn't get much from the last 3 drafts. So that was a problem in falling last year to 8 and 9. So I'm with you in the sense that they probably can find players at reasonable numbers at safety, corner, defensive tackle. Guard is where you and I disagree. Guard is a position where I would come out of the gates and come away with one of these frontline guys, whether it's Wilfries, James Daniels, someone like that. I'd be willing to spend at that position. And don't forget backup quarterback, because the masses will be up in arms if we get to Wednesday and all of the top guys are off the board. And I know
top guys, we're talking about backups, Barry. Top guys, we're talking about backups. For me, from a, and I hear what you're saying on the offensive guard. I'm bidding respectably. I'm not going out there doing what the Dolphins do, which is here's an offer you can't refuse. And, and back you into a corner. That's the Dolphins' way when there is a top, clear-cut stud sitting out there. The Terron Armsteads, the Ndamukong Suhs. But, Barry, you cannot show me that player. You cannot name me that player.
I don't know. Does James Daniels or Wilfries do it for you? Or do you think they're sort of second-tier guards?
They're second-tier guards. I don't – if I'm going to give you that top-tier money, and here's the proof of why I don't think teams are want to pay. The only team probably more thirsty for guards are the Chicago Bears. And they've got Tevin what is his name is? Tevin Jenkins out there, and people are saying, oh, he's going to get paid big money. They went out and they traded draft picks for 2 expensive guards.
Yes, that's telling.
That is the clear indicator that this class is going to be drastically overpaid and not have the production level that you would want. I am way more comfortable, and I know this is going to be so sacrilegious to you, and I know you're going to object because I know you, Barry. I am way more comfortable doing my respectable bidding, seeing if I catch a fish. I sign Isaiah Wynn. I sign Robert Jones, 1 year, $2.5 million deals. They're there. I didn't say they're starters. They're there. I'm going into this draft. I'm going into this draft, and I should be in position with one of my top 2 picks, first and second rounds. There are 8 offensive linemen here that can come in and be immediate day one starters. Tyler Banks from Alabama, Greg Zubal from North Dakota State, Ohio State's Donovan Jackson, LSU's Emory Jones, Texas's Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell, Missouri's I can't even say his name. The Missouri guy who killed the combine.
Membu, and also Tyler Booker, obviously from Alabama, is a guy who's projected for that range. All right, I've got to respond to this. I think it is negligent to go into the draft having simply minimum guards on your contract and not address this with 2 veterans in free agency. And to be perfectly clear, I want to spend big on 1 guard because you just can't leave it to chance and hope that a $2 or $3 million guy is going to work out. And then I would spend reasonably before the draft on another veteran guard. And if you're able to pick up a guard in the first or second round, great. That's more competition. Hopefully the guard can also play tackle like Kelvin Banks, and that gives you position versatility. But if you think it's wise to gamble on taking a couple of minimum guys in March and April and hope you find starting guards in April, I just think that's not the right approach. And as far as the 2 guys you mentioned, Rob Jones, my understanding is that he's likely going to get paid more than what the Dolphins are willing to offer him. And Isaiah Wynn, we know he's a good player when he's healthy, but you just can't gamble on him. Durability issues. And here's the other point I wanted to make to you on guard, Omar. This is why I want to overspend the position. I mean, it's clear with everyone's eyes that their guards couldn't move anyone last year in the run game. But to put that in perspective, I know some people have seen this, but for those who haven't, Warren Sharp, NFL analytics guru, he tweeted a couple of weeks ago that the Dolphins had not only the highest percentage of runs that went for a loss or no gain last season, but no other team was even close. 28% of Miami's runs either lost yardage or gained no yards last year. Houston was next closest at 23%. On 3rd and 4th down running plays where the Dolphins just needed short yardage, get a first down, 46% of their running plays on 3rd and 4th down lost yards or gained no yards. That is abysmal. That is what led to the disappearance of the deep passing game. Teams did not respect the Dolphins' running game. And, of course, you can't say Shane and Mostert and Jalen Wright were blameless. Obviously, there were some holes occasionally that they missed. But for the most part, this was a guard problem, and it ruined everything. It torpedoed the Dolphins' deep passing game. It ruined everything about their offense last season. That's why it has to be a priority. First hour free agency, even if you have to overpay. I rest my case.
I will not overpay, Barry, and I am standing on my ground. There is not a single guard on this market who's worth 14, if not 12 million. I'm being generous to you by going to 14. If I'm paying $14 million for a player, he will be an impact player. A guard is not an impact player unless you're Zach Martin, and he's not coming back. He's retiring. I am not paying that price point for a position that I should be able to address if I'm actually good at my job. Now, that's another debate. That's another debate, another discussion for another day. Somebody should be good at their job of finding a guard. Somebody. I don't know who, but if it's not on this roster, go pay somebody to be a consultant to find you 2 guards in this draft. If you can't do it, go find somebody who can. Go hire Jimmy Johnson and pay him $300,000 to find you a damn guard.
Are you aware the Dolphins have not found a long-term starting guard in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th round this entire century? And so if you're going to tell me that you're going to wait to find your starting guards in the draft, that puts you in a position where you have to use your 1st or 2nd rounder.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
There's no way you can count on a 3rd round guard becoming a starter here because the Dolphins simply are not capable of finding one.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You know why I'm okay with that? Because if I spend my 13th pick on that guard in the length of his career, the 4 years of his career, I'm paying him what you want to pay somebody, just a body, for 1 season. I cannot do it, Barry. I will not do it. I am quoting Mike Signature. Cannot do it. Will not do it. Love guards. Cannot do it. I'm not just paying some dude $14 million to stand
put yourself in the box where you have to take an offensive lineman 13? What if they're intrigued by the Penn State tight end and want the best 12 personnel package in the league to play Jonnu Smith and the Penn State tight end together? What if a defensive lineman of great pedigree should drop? The kid from Michigan. What if you want to address another position? What about safety? The South Carolina kid who runs like a blazing 4.3 in the 40. If you tell me that you do not emerge from free agency with a frontline guard or 2 and you're leaving it to the draft, I'm telling you it's a mistake, because then it puts you in a position where you have to take an interior lineman at 13. I don't want to be in that position. I want to take the best available player at 13. I don't want to be forced to take a Tyler Booker from Alabama, who's a good player, but you don't want to be forced to take anyone. Kelvin Banks might not be there.
Hear me out on this, Barry. How about I go 4 second level guards, 4 second tier guards that give me an option of competition. I know that doesn't satisfy you.
I know. I'm spending on a proven one. I'm not bringing in 4 random guards at $2 million a year and hoping that 2 of them are good starters.
I'll go $4 million a year. Like, I hear you, and we're just a poll. If there was a stud out there like a Trey Smith, I'd say do it. Right. There isn't. Okay. I would rather have traded. And hey, Kansas City should have known the Dolphins were desert thirsty for guards. Why couldn't you trade Tooney to Miami for a 4th round pick?
Yeah, I wondered that too. My thinking with that was, A, the Dolphins didn't want the big cap hit. B, Grier traditionally, and this is something I agree with, Grier traditionally has gone after players in their 20s unless he's really desperate to fill a need. Obviously, Calais was an exception last year, was a May signing, a value signing, was a terrific signing. So I think that's the thinking, that he'd rather invest in guys coming off their first rookie contract. So Grier, based on history, Grier will sign a corner early in free agency because he's told us repeatedly you could never have enough corners. Based on history,
and everybody's
he's going to target guys who won't break the bank, will get decent money, but won't break the bank, who are in their mid-20s coming off their rookie contract. That is what Chris Grier historically has done, and that's what's going to happen next week. To me, the big mystery is, do they open the pocketbook for anyone beyond Jordan Brooks type money. Obviously, Brooks got the most lucrative of the contract last offseason, 3 years, $30 million. Brewer was 3 years, $24 million. Do they go beyond those numbers for anyone, whether it's a safety like Jeremy Chin, whether it's a corner, whether it's a guard like Daniels or Freeze? Austin Corbett, again, wouldn't cost that much probably. Banks from San Francisco wouldn't cost that much. It would be a good scheme for the guard. So the question is, are all the signings going to be in that 15 to 33 years, 15, 30 million range, or will they go above that? That to me is going to be one of the big mysteries of next week. And also, how much do you pay on a backup quarterback? If Marcus Mariota's agent comes to you and says, hey, I've got some teams willing to pay me $9 million, do you go that high? Garoppolo, right, bye-bye. Garoppolo would be cheaper. Because with San Francisco last year earned only a couple of million, or with the Rams, I should say, obviously. Earned only a couple million last year to be Stafford's backup. He would be cheaper. Garoppolo's last season in which he played much, Omar, 2023, he wasn't very good. He was very good in 2022. He's been historically pretty good player when he's not hurt.
Wasn't in this offense, he's been very good.
Yes, he has.
Outside of this offense, he has not been very good.
Yeah.
And I will say this about the quarterback position. There are guys out there. There are the Marcus Mariotas, the Jimmy Garoppolos, the Joshua Dobbs, who I will continue to advocate for, even though I just realized he's 30. He's the same age as Garoppolo, which blows my mind, with less of a body of work. You've got Gardner Minshew's out there. I remember back in the day, Barry, both you and I, who were working for competing papers, we both had our jaws on the floor when we figured out how much they signed Mike White for. It was just a what are you doing kind of deal.
First hour free agency, and really one of their biggest miscalculations, right?
Yes, but I like the contract, and I'm offering the contract to Garoppolo, to Dobbs, maybe to Gardner Minshew, and I say, first guy to take it, it's going to be my backup. And if nobody takes it, I'm not afraid, and this is a very controversial opinion, I'm not afraid to break the Teddy Bridgewater glass, break in case of emergency. Teddy will come here and play for $2 million. Teddy is so popular inside that locker room. I think the team would celebrate his return. And really, we're talking about a guy you can break in case of emergency. And who knows your offense, can execute it, isn't rattled by the speed of the game like Skyler was last season. It can give you more than Tyler Snoop Huntley. And to be honest with you, Barry, I'm fine with bringing Tyler Snoop Huntley back for a 1-year, $2 million deal, guarantee him $500,000. If he gets better out there, he gets better out there. It's really a backup. Yes, it's going to tank your season. What I'm not comfortable with is going into this with a high drafted quarterback and saying, oh, okay, if he needs to play, he's going to save our season, because that's not going to happen.
Agree with you. It has to be a veteran established backup with a history of winning games in the NFL. To me, it's either going to be Mariota, maybe a 2-year deal.
What history of winning games does he have?
Right. He played well last year when needed, obviously in a limited role for the Commanders. And he's had some success, but obviously he's not been able to sustain a career as an NFL starter. Garoppolo would be cheaper. You could probably get Garoppolo for about $3 million, but I do think you're going to see a name backup quarterback signed last week for one simple reason. It was the most glaring mistake made by this regime last year, and it was glaring not only to fans, but to the owner. And there's no way Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel can go to Steve Ross and say, hey, we couldn't sign an established veteran backup QB, but we're going to take our chances. We think Tua's going to be healthy this year. I think, unlike any other position, there's more pressure on them knowing how public this mistake was and how their owner knows that they screwed this up. So that's why I think you're going to see an established veteran backup sign next week. My money would be on Mariota or Garoppolo. Again, not reporting this, just my instincts, but we'll see. So to you, first calls they make Monday, obviously they'll be tampering by every team this weekend, but first calls you make among players not on your roster, I don't need names, but positions. What's the first thing you prioritize?
I'm with you. Just like we saw Mike White be the first quarterback signing that they did 2 years ago, I think quarterback's going to be the first domino that falls. Yeah. What that is, you're bidding high. There aren't that many out there. You're probably going to show interest in maybe 5 guys. You take it to a tier. Whoever takes the money is who takes the money. And as I said to you, I'm not going more than 2 years, $8 million, guarantee of 4. It's a backup position.
Exactly. And for those saying, Omar, sorry to break your train of thought. For those saying, why not call Justin Fields? Why not call Aaron Rodgers? Why not call Russell Wilson? Those guys are not signing to be a backup on Monday. Those guys are going to wait it out and find starting jobs or hope to find starting jobs, especially Rodgers. Fields could end up starting in Pittsburgh. So that's why I'm not even discussing those three.
Actually, you know what? There are a couple of young quarterbacks like Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, that I would, even Justin Fields, I'm going to put that money on the table for him. And if
I got Fields takes it, I agree with you on Fields. I would do that as well, but I think he's going to find a starting job.
No. I didn't say he's not going to find a starting job, but an offer is an offer.
In Pittsburgh, he might. If Pittsburgh doesn't bring in Aaron Rodgers, there were reports last week that Fields is much more likely than Wilson to come back to the Steelers as their starter if the Steelers cannot upgrade. I say upgrade with Aaron Rodgers or someone else who becomes available. So I think Fields is unrealistic, but I agree with you. I would at least make the call and make the offer.
Yeah, I think a lot of what's going to happen with the quarterback position kind of depends on what happens to Aaron Rodgers, whether he picks the Raiders or he picks Pittsburgh. And I think those are the two teams that, and then it's like a domino effect. You got Sam Darnold, and that's going to impact everybody else. You got Sam Darnold, you got Russell Wilson. That's the domino effects of quarterbacks. But then you can also look at a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, where Indianapolis is saying, hey, we're going to have a quarterback competition. What backup quarterback is going to look at that situation and say, I could go steal that team? Jimmy Garoppolo.
Great point. And that's where you're at risk with some of these guys. Garoppolo, Mariota might say, I'd rather go there than just waiting to see if Tua is injured.
Yeah, at this point, Mariota should know he's a backup in the NFL, and it's probably just
every player with an ego, especially a guy drafted as high as he, would think I want to be able to compete for a starting job, right? It's just natural. It's understandable. So I think that you raise an excellent point. That's where the Dolphins are at risk in this market. Teams who have quarterbacks who are young and unproven, where the veteran with their ego think I can go in there and win that job. You're right. Colt's a perfect example of that.
And Joe Flacco's not a bad backup for here.
I agree. Although, I don't know, obviously there have been these flurries of interceptions within the last couple of years, mixed with some very good games, but he's very turnover prone, obviously, the last couple of years, particularly last year when he took over for Richardson. So is he just simply at the age where you can't trust him with being able to have ball security?
And I think that another factor that you have to bring into the equation is, do these guys want to spend the time committed to teaching this young quarterback, or do they want a veteran? And I think the way that Tua monopolizes snaps, you got to have a guy who's snap of the finger, he's ready to go, which is in the Bridgewater mold for me. Now, they might disagree. Dolphin fans might disagree, whatever. Jimmy Garoppolo's probably somewhere in that neighborhood, but I wouldn't be scared to go Trey Lance or Zach Wilson if they want to do a lot of teaching. But I really don't think they got the time, nor the patience, nor the attention span to sit there and commit to teaching a young quarterback. But that's on a whole different subject, Barry. What is the first move that you expect in free agency?
I agree with you. Backup quarterback, I think interior lineman, defensive tackle, corner. Those are the four things I think will be filled quickly. Obviously, they're going to sign at least a couple safeties the first week because they have no one at the moment except Elijah Campbell.
He's not signed. He's a free agent.
True, but they have his rights, I think, to be.
No, I don't think he's
unrestricted. He's unrestricted. You're absolutely right. He's unrestricted. Yeah. I'll tell you positions I would wait on. I would wait on running back, even though you need a physical presence to complement Wright and Achane. Obviously, that market is always saturated. I would wait as long as you need to get value as far as a bigger back. I would kind of wait number 3, number 4 receiver. Obviously, Malik Washington will be one of those two, but there's such a saturation at receiver. There are a number of big receivers who are going to have to settle for $2 million, $3 million a year. So I would wait at that position. Here's a final position I want to bring up with you, because this to me is a real dilemma. An inline blocking tight end. They hoped Julian Hill would be really good at that. He had good moments at times, but I found it interesting that Pro Football Focus, I know you question their numbers, said among 75 tight ends, he was the 5th worst run blocker. I have a hard time reconciling those numbers with the fact that John Embry says he's an excellent run blocker. So the question is, do you need to prioritize finding a quality inline blocking tight end to take the job from Julian Hill and obviously complement Jonnu Smith in 2 tight end sets? Should that be a priority?
If Harrison Bryant former FAU prospect is for the right price as a number 2. This is a very deep and talented tight end class. A lot of those guys are going to be available early in day 3, just like running back. The areas where this draft is deep, I'm waiting because I think the market is going to drive down the price. Like running backs, I'd be shocked if a single running back signs on day 1 of free agency. And I think that the longer they go without work, the cheaper they're going to become. Eventually, you're going to have a Cam Akers out there just begging you for a job. A Jeff Wilson. And I don't see the harm in bringing back Jeff Wilson, a 1-year deal again.
I think he's going to look elsewhere, Omar.
Yeah. No, I know he's going to look elsewhere. But
soldier, and this is something which you're aware of. Obviously, good soldier, team guy, but he wants to play. So I think even if they invite him back, my sense is he's going to look elsewhere.
Definitely, but you got to have that. Got to have that job. I think Elijah Mitchell is another guy. Young, apparently, from what I'm told, Mike McDaniel had a huge role in finding him with the 49ers. You know how Mike likes his backs that he's familiar with. They know his style. He knows their style. And yes, running back, I'm not comfortable where they are from a depth standpoint. But the one thing I can tell you Chris Greer can find is he can find running backs.
Absolutely. And corners after the draft. It's been a struggle finding.
Yeah, but don't run on that draft pick.
No one masters post-draft corners better than this regime, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of, Kohu is going to eat about $3.5 million into your cap space as a restricted free agent. He's obviously going to be tendered at some point in the next 3 or 4 days.
Yes, and that's going to eat up into your cap space. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. First domino is Kohu. He's expected to get a right of first refusal tender. Then the question is, do you go to the bank of Tua? And then if you do go to the bank of Tua, that means we will be bidding big and we will be spending big. So it'll be interesting to see. Dolphins In Depth will be here all offseason for you, providing your needs. And as you know, Barry's going to have a live blog going up as we continue to go through the rounds of free agency. We will be here to provide all your coverage and see you next week here on Miami Herald's Dolphins In Depth.